Now, the crew are very excited about your Guinness Punch, Levi. I think we might need to send the runner out for a few more cans of stout. I am delighted to welcome the man, the legend, Mr. Levi Roots, to the fire. Thanks so much for coming to the Memory Kitchen today,
No
Levi.
problem at all.
Now, Charlie and Barney are busy cooking your Puerto Rican kitchen.
Yes, well, I'm not worried or anything like that. I'm just hoping they got the ingredients, because I know with Caribbean food sometimes it's a bit difficult to get everything that's in there. But I'm working on it in the supermarkets.
Yeah, it's that annoying thing, and I know this with my own mum. You say, how do you do that particular dish, da-da-da, and she's like, well, you just got to feel it, you just got to smell it, taste it, and it's like, well, yes, but how much do I put in?
Yeah.
Are you precise with your ingredients?
Well, my mom is, she is, but I think I've learned not to be precise, because I like to think of myself one of these new age type Caribbean chefs who will allow for change.
Okay.
Whereas traditional Caribbean chef, you cannot change anything at all. They'll want it exactly how their grandma and their grandma before that always made it.
Levi, this looks amazing. So is everything for your dish cooked in one pot?
It is, but traditionally in Jamaica it's not.
Yeah.
Rice and peas is one of the most iconic dishes in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Absolutely, the first dish, if I may also add. But I think when I wanted to cook this for my mom, I actually started to travel the Caribbean and got to see that it's not just Jamaica is the only island in the Caribbean. There are thousands of islands, and they all cook their rice and peas in a different way. And I wanted to cook something for my mom which was easy on the washing up.
Yes.
So this is only one pot in there.
And it
so
blocks the
everything,
flavour in as
it
well,
blocks
right?
the flavour in,
Yeah.
and she absolutely loved it.
We've got some really good Scotch bonnets.
Let me show off one for you.
Yeah, you show.
Okay, nice and lovely. This is how you do it in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Joking, ain't you?
I honestly thought you were going to go
You're
for that.
absolutely joking. This is hotter than pepper spray, you know. Yeah. And again, it's not about hot chilies, because I think a lot of people always think that when you cook Caribbean food, it's sort of face-ache time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's absolutely. This is about the flavors. It's about the rice cooking into the chicken, into all the flavors.
So all the juices from the chicken go into the rice.
It's a comfort food.
It's also served with a Guinness Punch.
It's served with Guinness Punch, and again, Guinness Punch is one of these magical things that you have on the table. And Guinness Punch is a bit like Bailey's, where you have the bitterness of the Guinness, but then you have the sweetness of suppligent and the condensed milk and nutmeg and vanilla and all that. It's just delicious. Oh, this is like a super duper version of a Bailey's. Oh. So nice with your fried chicken, make burgers finger licking, on your barbecue and your drumsticks, just put some reggae sauce on your dish. Boom.
So your grandmother, you mentioned grandmothers and mothers. Your
Yes.
grandmother Miriam, she looked after you. So when your parents came over as part of the Windrush generation in 1961,
Yes.
they left you and your siblings with grandmother Miriam.
Yeah.
So how was it growing up with grandmother Miriam in her kitchen?
It was beautiful. It was absolutely wonderful. And I wish somebody had asked me at the age of 10 when I was coming over here, did I want to leave? Because the kids never had a choice. Nobody asked me, did I want to leave this beautiful woman that was teaching me about food, and this lovely place of Clarendon in Jamaica where, you know, every lake has jumping fish, every tree has a fruit on there. And it's just the most idyllic place for a young boy to have grown up. And then all of a sudden I came home from play, as I normally did, because every year my parents would send a suitcase for one of the kids to come over. And me being the youngest, I didn't realize what was happening. So every year I would see a brown suitcase would arrive for my parents from the UK in the corner, and I would see my grandmother in tears in the other corner. And I just didn't understand. All I would know that I would have a bit more room in the bed when one of my brothers and sisters left. So I didn't really understand what was happening. I knew they were, you know, going off and leaving me one at a time. And finally I came home from play one day and I saw the same scenario, and I saw my grandma crying on the other side, and I looked around and I realized that I didn't have a brother or a sister left. It was my time to come. And she was in tears because she knew that she probably would have never seen her charges again whereas my parents had left her with five children to look after. And every year she would be saying goodbye to them all, and then finally it was and I'm welling up a bit here because every time I think about it.
No, don't worry. It's very emotional stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
All of this.
yeah.
Grandparents leaving, travelling so far.
Yes,
you came
absolutely.
all the way to this crazy island of ours.
Didn't know my mum and dad because they left me when I was about 4 or 5, so I didn't really have a connection with them. It was just this wonderful woman, you know, my grandma, that was mom, dad, and dog and everything to me at the same time.
Everything.
And leaving her was the most tragic thing I could ever think of. But I think those cookery lessons that she taught me, those days of being around her when I was a bit like a gopher, a sous chef, because everything that we had, we cooked in our garden. We were really poor, so we couldn't go to the shops and buy food. So everything was absolutely growing by her in our garden. And it was me, she would be calling me from up there, and I have to be climbing the ackee tree and the lemon tree and the mango tree and whatever it was, I had to be climbing, picking the fruits, coming back, and she would be churning, you know, this fantastic pot that she had, and she would be singing these Baptist church hymns that she would be singing. And I would be really just hanging on to what we call a frock tail as a kid then, you know. And that's why when I eventually came over here, even though I couldn't spell my first name, and as I mentioned to you earlier on, it only had 5 letters, and don't you dare call me I couldn't spell my first name with 5 letters coming over here and going into school at the age of 11. But one thing that I could do, I could cook a mean rice and peas and ackee and saltfish and oxtail and all the most delicious Caribbean dishes, because my grandmother, that was the stuff that she knew. She wasn't particularly educated herself, but
It was
she
in
could
you.
cook.
It was.
Yeah,
It
she
was
could
part
cook.
of you.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you said, Levi, that when you first came to England, you know, your mum and dad had left when you were 4, so you didn't really know them. You obviously, you got to know them extremely well, of course, and you say that your mum has been a huge influence on you, as well as your grandmother Miriam.
Yes, yeah. Well, my mom was a carbon copy of my grandma, you know, her mom, because I think she noticed that something was missing from her youngest child, who couldn't bond with my other brothers and sisters. My father didn't really accepted me as how I thought he would have. I thought being the youngest and not seeing him, I would have come over here and been the favorite of him,
Yeah.
just like how I was the favorite of my grandma.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, and I think my mom, sorry.
No, don't worry, Levi, don't worry. Take a moment, it's absolutely fine.
I think my mom kind of spotted that maybe I need a little bit of, you know, extra attention, and she went about to write to my grandma and then to find out what she was doing with me, with the food and how, you know, she was operating. And my mom just sort of turned around to her own style and to be able to sort of help me in that respect. So even though I struggled at school, you know, really struggled badly, a bit of a follower because I wanted to catch up, you know, having not been able to do the curriculum thing, I just thought I wanted to be the cool kid, you know, that all the other kids liked. So, and in some ways that was the wrong thing to do. And my mom kind of spotted that, and she sort of
Clever.
brought the food in where I'd missed that. And that's how I managed to straighten out myself.
That's very
you know,
interesting.
through my mom. You know, so my mom passed away in 2020, just as the pandemic hit. And it was at the time when she had got a little bit sick before then, and I was cooking for her every day for the past 4 years. It was,
Amazing. What
cooking
a lovely
stuff.
thing.
Yeah, and just really enjoying her stories of her telling me about my grandma, because again, when I left her, I wasn't really that old enough for her to be telling me about her life.
Yeah.
So I knew how my grandma cooked, and I got all her recipes, including the sauce recipe and everything, but I didn't really know much about her as a person. And again, it was my mom again that allowed me to tap into what this lovely woman that, you know, that looked after me, you know, importantly. And I got to understand a little bit about her from
What
my mom.
incredible women. I just love the sound of both of them.
Yeah.
The strength, the grit,
Yeah.
the humour.
My grandma was the one with the humour. There was never a dull moment with her when we was growing up as kids. But for my mom, it was that hard work ethics that I think I got from her.
Yeah.
Because as I said about the Windrush generation, to do what they did, you know, they
So
must
brave.
absolutely.
So brave.
And my mom was just such in that way inclined, and I
Yeah.
got that hard work that. If something is going to be done, you're going to focus and you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I think when I struggled and eventually when I started my business, you know, after the carnival and that sort of stuff, and I knew now that I had my grandma's recipe, I was rubbish at Plan A, because Plan A was the music. Plan A was me getting on top of the pops and making the #1 song. And but I always had the Plan B in the back of my mind, because that was my grandmother's stuff, you know, the food and the cooking. And it is when I started to do the cooking, my mom is that, you know, that focusedness of what she was to be able to go through that, and as well as going to Dragons Den and do my stuff on there. I think that was the sort of inspiration coming from my mom.